Thank you very, very much. It's a great honor for me to be here. I'm a great admirer of the IITs and a great admirer of the Dean. It's terrific to be on a platform with him. I'm in a way, a counter-study in leadership. As we were coming in, he was being very complimentary about what was happening at NYU, and I pointed out that I'm simply a storyteller. I'm a good noticer and storyteller, and no one would accuse me of being a leader in the way that he manifests leadership. I think it's a great signal for this extraordinary institution called Harvard Business School that he is its new dean. I think that if there's a word that can sum up what I would give as my message today, it's the word connectivity. There's kind of a deep connectivity in the world, and I think it is a defining feature of the century that we've now entered, this past decade. One could simply observe, for example, the connectivity between my university, New York University, and this assemblage. Your invocation yesterday was given by our trustee, Chandrika Tandon, who sits before me, my boss. One of the great incarnations of the connection of the great cultures of India and the United States, arguably the leading businesswoman in the world, is Indra Nooyi, who is an NYU parent. We have over 1,000 students at NYU who carry Indian passports. The new dean of our undergraduate business school, Geeta Menon, our vice provost for science, Srini Srinivasan, and one of our great mathematicians and scientists, Srinivasa Varadhan, who just this week was awarded the Presidential Medal of Science, and who 3 years ago won the Nobel Prize. This is an extraordinary connection, and it would be enough to illustrate connectivity, but there's also institutional connectivity. We have put together a very special consortium of leading schools in technology, computer science, and engineering around a project we're calling the Center for Urban Sustainability and Progress, what we hope will become a major, if not the major, center for the study of sustainable cities in the world. And along with Carnegie Mellon and University of Toronto, Warwick from the UK, and the City University here, we now have been joined by IIT Bombay. So this is deep connectivity, and it's just one slice into this room. The dean could make a similar slice, and virtually any major intellectual institution could make the same kind of connections. There is deep connectivity. And as we seek, as this conference has as its theme, solutions for a better world, I think how we manage the reality of this connectivity will be key to how this century unfolds. And I want to present to you an argument in two parts about the role of universities in managing that connectivity. The first will be a simple, straightforward, utilitarian argument, very familiar. It'll sound in the economy, but it also resonates in culture and religion and all sorts of human activities. But then I want to offer a second observation, a more elevated one, a more philosophical one, about the role of universities as we attempt to deal with this connectivity. I'll close with just a brief comment about what NYU is doing to react to all of this. So let me begin with the utilitarian argument. We've all read, I trust, or at least we know of Tom Friedman's now more than decade-old book, The World is Flat. It's it's the first metaphor I would offer to you of connectivity. It's principally economic in its content, and I think it opened the world's eyes in some ways and began a new conversation. It's an interesting metaphor, but it's not a complete metaphor at all. It misses, I think, essential facts. Not Friedman's fault, he was the first mover in this area, about, for example, the importance of cities. And the fact that the world is going to be characterized ultimately not by this flatness, but by, in a way, peaks that rise from the flatness. I call these peaks in my writing idea capitals. There will be a set of idea capitals, a relatively small set at the very top, maybe 8 or 10 or 12 of these idea capitals that will be tied together. A useful metaphor might be, excuse me, a useful metaphor might be to the Italian Renaissance, when the creative and the talent class moved among Milan and Venice and Florence and Rome, but now the names of those cities will be changed, and there'll be 8 or 10 or 12 spread through the continents, and the talent and creative class will move among them. What will create the pinnacles in this world? And you know, in this week, when for we Americans the baseball playoffs begin, and we think of, you know, major league cities and AAA cities and AA cities, there will be, of course, scores and scores of cities that will operate out in this web. But what will create the pinnacles? In my writing, I observed about this city, New York City, that in the 20th century it was made great by what the urbanologists call FIRE. Finance, insurance, and real estate. And when Mayor Bloomberg asked me 6 or 7 years ago to run a retreat for his commissioners about what would make New York City operate as one of these pinnacles in 2050, I offered a compliment to FIRE. I said, FIRE alone will not be enough for New York City. FIRE will have to be supplemented by ICE, the intellectual, the cultural, the educational. Because the talent class, the creative class, wants to have the intellectual, cultural, and educational to fill out a life. And that will then will magnetize the talent to these idea capitals. It was 50 years ago, just about as the IITs were being born, that Daniel Patrick Moynihan was asked in India, how do you create a world-class city, a city that's at the top? And he said, create a great university and wait 200 years. Of course, 200 years, 50 years ago is 10 years today. And it still remains the fact that in this knowledge century, this fire and ice will be fed by universities. These idea capitals will manifest what universities have always known, and this complicates the picture somewhat. And that is that universities have always, in these idea capitals today, will operate beyond sovereignty. Ideas have always operated beyond sovereignty, going back to the Middle Ages. Now talent, commerce, culture, and even civil society operate beyond sovereignty. I think India gets this in a remarkable way. It gets the first premise of the importance of education. The IITs show this, I think, in ways that we can explore if you're interested. The United States is losing this insight as we focus more on the numerosity of degrees than on the quality of the degrees. But I would suggest in this first argument, the utilitarian argument, that as we approach building this network of idea capitals, a metaphor of competition should give way at least to a metaphor of coopetition, and I would argue most to a metaphor of network. I think it's good news for the United States to see higher education rising throughout the world. Knowledge is not a zero-sum game, and I think it's important that we respond to the connectivity as we enter this knowledge century, the connectivity that binds us by capitalizing on its positive side. Let me move now to my second observation, the more elevated and philosophical of my comments. It will take less time because in a way it flows from the first. The connectivity that I described is resulting from and causative of a rapid miniaturization of the world. It seems to me that this miniaturization of the world is a more important phenomena to observe even than the flow of connectivity that Tom Friedman represented in his book. We are at an axial moment. If you pick up tomorrow's book review in the New York Times, there's a review of Robert Bella's new book, Religion in Human Evolution, and he talks about what the theologian Karl Jaspers had referred to as the first axial age, the period of about 1,000 years. Now Bella narrows it, but the period of about 1,000 years, from about 800 years or 700 years before the Common Era to about 300 years after the Common Era, when individuality and notions of responsibility of the individual arose out of the context of what had been a collective or a tribal society. You see ancient Israel, classical Greece, Confucian China, Buddhist India, all pressing this philosophical front during that period in different parts of the world. I believed for a long time, and I've been taught by great teachers, that the world has entered a second axial moment. Bella doesn't talk about this in his book. I think it is the twin to what Karl Jaspers noticed about that 1,000-year period. And in this second axial moment, the question for humankind is, now having developed this notion of individuality very robustly, can we learn to be, in this world of ours, a community of communities? Can we learn, without homogenizing the world, to create a global civil society of peoples? It seems to me our choice, as the world miniaturizes, is between blowing it apart in a clash of civilizations or in learning to live in this more ecumenical way. Each element, like the element of a watch, but interconnected to create a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. This requires tremendous understanding, tremendous knowledge of that which is different from you. It requires looking at the world not through the single window you're given, but through the many facets of a diamond. This is the spirit that's always been in universities. And it seems to me that as we try to build a better world, as we look for solutions for a better world, we would be well served if we fed the instinct of our higher education institutions to breed the kind of communities of communities that can populate this 21st century, if we do it right, if we don't blow it apart. These two arguments, the utilitarian and the philosophical, are what animate, frankly, the new structure of a university that we're trying to advance at New York University. This is not the time or place to go into it. If you want to read about it, just go on my website, and the paper that was referred to is there as a first cut at it. But basically, now if you're a student